Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me as I review and talk about some fantastic books for kids and adults, for that matter, in this video. But first, very quickly, I wanted to point out this book, The Power of Poppy Pendle. I did a Facebook exclusive review along with another book, which you'll have to see the video to find out, on my Facebook page a couple weeks ago. But I just released the video here on YouTube for anyone who doesn't have Facebook or couldn't see it. This is a absolutely incredible book. I'm so in love with it. So definitely check out that video if you didn't get a chance to see it on the Children's Literature Training Academy Facebook page. And also a little preview before I go into today's selection is what I'm reading now, and I'll be posting reviews of next Friday. So this is The Summer of the Swans by Betsy Byars, and this is a classic. This was a Newbery Award-winning book. Very beautiful story about a 14-year-old girl and her brother. And this one is quite well known. It's the Sideways Stories from the Wayside School. So this book was completely not what I expected, a series of kind of humorous individual stories about things that go on in this school. There's a lot of talk about this book, using it in the classroom. And The Wish Giver by Bill Britton. And so this has a little bit of a magic and a little bit of a dark kind of a background. So this was also something that I'm very excited to talk about. It's a fabulous book. I just finished this one. But for now, let's talk about these three. First, I want to talk about is the Old Willis Place, but we also have by Chris Riddell, two books from the Goth Girl series, Goth Girl and the Weathering Fright and Goth Girl and the Fate Worse Than Death. And these fall under children's, technically the children's, well, the same as this one by Mary Downing Hahn, the Old Willis Place. These fall under children's Gothic, or I'm sorry, children's horror genre, which can include terror, Gothic, supernatural, paranormal. And I know when you hear of children's horror, you think, oh, kids shouldn't be reading those kind of books. You kind of, your brain automatically jumps to adult horror, which is like terrifying. We think of like The Exorcist and, you know, Stephen King novels and terrible things. So children's horror genre is actually quite important, and it's not at all like what you can relate to when you think of adult horror movies or books. And first I'll talk about the books, but I did want to comment on that, you know, children reading supernatural and paranormal, Gothic literature for children, some books that might fall under the horror genre really fall more under fantastic fiction, and sometimes a type of fantasy. They have more magical elements to them. So I'll talk in a minute about that, but I want to talk first about Mary Downing Hahn, and she has written over 36 children's books in the quote children's horror genre. Here's the backside. You can see a few of them here. One of them is very famous, Wait Till Helen Comes, which I talk about in my children's horror literature training class for adults, which is in development. An amazing book with many lessons to be applied to homeschooling and curriculum wise and whatnot. But this book, The Old Willis Place, was very different from some of her other books. And I don't know if any of you as kids yourselves remember reading her books in the 80s, the 90s. But this was a traditional ghost story, and it starts out with two children, a brother and a sister, living in the woods on the grounds of this old manor that kind of has this Gothic setting that kind of looks like this, that's been empty. And they're observing, there's like a motor home or trailer on the property, where a new groundskeeper or property keeper and his daughter are moving into the trailer to be caretakers to the property. And the little girl and little boy, the siblings that are hiding in the woods, are watching them move in. And there's some talk and flashbacks about all the different groundskeepers they've had and things that have happened to them and how they all run away or vanish or leave. And the girl's hoping she can be friends with the girl moving in. So we don't really know at the beginning, you know, I mean, you know, it becomes pretty clear very quickly that these two children are no longer living, but the book is portrayed with them living like normal children. But there's all these rules they have to follow. They can't step outside the gates off the property. They can't show themselves. And only, you know, children, like the girl that moved into the trailer with her father, can see her and her brother, but adults can't see them. So they go about, you know, there's some grief about how they want to see their mother and father. They are terrified of the house on their property, going near it because of something, quote, the bad thing that happened there, which we don't find out till later in the book what that is, which is really how they died. But the girl in the trailer does meet the other girl and the boy. They look like kind of like wild creatures who've been living in the woods, and becomes friends with them. And so it's very intriguing. I don't want to give all of it away to really understand the context of how good this book is, but there's some mystery elements too. There's a lot of mystery trying to figure out, first you think these kids are alive, turns out they're not alive. You wonder what happened to them, how they died, what's the secret behind this house. She makes friends with the little girl who can see her and thinks she's a real girl. And they creep into the house a few times, and there's these kind of terror elements. There's some supernatural stuff in the empty house, the rotting, decaying empty house. But the new girl that she meets, that's her friend, the one who lives in the trailer, she wants to explore it. She's brave, adventurous, but the ghost girl, I guess we'll call her, is terrified of the house because of that thing that happened there. And really, it was the girl and the boy have no concept of time. They've been dead since the 19 teens, and now it's like modern time, and they're still waiting to see their mother and father. There's like this development of understanding that they're dead, but that they haven't quite resolved their bodies. How they died was terrible. When we find out in the book how they died, that has to do with the house, an old woman that lived in the house. But the girl and the dad in the trailer are there to kind of resolve that for them, which is the purpose of the story. The children died at the hands of the old lady, and whose ghost is haunting this house, and whose soul is also trapped in the house. And so, the bottom line is there's a happy resolution. The girl and the father discovers, the bodies that were never found of the children, and they have to be set free so the children can move on. They think their parents are still alive. They don't realize how little time has passed, or how much time has passed, but they find out that their parents died, 60, 70 years ago, and they get to be reunited. But the reason, and I love her books, they are just this combination of beautiful and intriguing and kind of mildly haunting descriptions of settings, scenery. She brings in elements of the Gothic, the supernatural, the paranormal, some mild terror elements like the ghost of the old woman getting freed from the house, chasing them in the woods. They think that the woman's after them just because she's the one who technically accidentally killed them. But children don't know it was an accident. But by the time the old lady catches up with them, they think something bad's gonna happen to them. So it's a little, there's a little bit of a scary element being chased by this ghost of this afraid, crazy old woman. But then when she makes contact with them, it's more like a resolution apology thing. So it's not like terrible, bloody, gruesome, horrible things happen in adult horror literature at all. So there's a little bit of that mystery, a little bit of fantasy elements, some magic in here. Mary Downing Hahn, she has beautiful books. I love them so much. They're amazing. And there are benefits to children reading supernatural, horror, Gothic, and paranormal literature. And one of the benefits is it gives a child, depending on the age, depending on the book, depending on your beliefs, it gives the child a lot of the books for children in this genre. And I talk about this more in my Elements of Horror and Supernatural Literature class for adults, for selecting these books for children and teaching them. These books for children in these genres are generally written more as mysteries to be solved. Children that are in fearful situations, that overcome their fears, they find solutions to their fears, they find solutions to problems. But for a child reading the book, it kind of allows children to examine possibilities of belief that they can take as they grow older of what death is, what death means. Is there life after death? What it could be like? Is there such a thing as ghosts? They can use their analysis skills, their determination skills, put in their own opinions about what they think about if ghosts exist, and if there's life after death. And there's always these lessons between good and bad in these books, or traditional and fantasy, it's good and evil. And it's always the good that wins. So there's a lot to be learned, and a lot of stimulation of children's analysis skills that can go into reading this kind of literature. And there are a lot of ties to classic Gothic literature, like from the Bronte sisters and original horror literature, Phantom of the Opera, and those kind of books, that you see still elements of Gothic literature in a lot of horror genre, books for children. Two others that I think are interesting, different, really unique are by the children's laureate artist Chris Riddell. He did the art on a book box by Neil Gaiman that had the Graveyard book Coraline, which I did a review of way down 4 years ago, but still there on my channel. You can scroll down and see that. That's Neil Gaiman's box set of his books, but Chris Riddell did all the art for that book. But these books were actually written by Chris Riddell, and he did the art. And they're Gothic books with more of a kind of a magical, unrealistic, mildly humorous parodies behind them. But the art is amazing. And in these books, it's the art that tells the story more than the story itself. I have completely different opinions about them. There are, I think, 4 or 5 books in this series. You can see on the back here, there's a purple covered one I don't have, and the writing's too small for me to read. This one I did not like. It was hard and painful to get through. This was kind of a parody again of the Bronte sisters, Goth Girl and the Wuthering. It's like from, you know, obviously the Bronte, the Wuthering Heights, but you know, it's Gothic. The setting, the girl is Gothic. The setting, you know, it's an old castle, it's an old manor. You got the girl in distress and some, you know, adversary character creatures. But what's funny is Chris Riddell. What he does is he comes up with funny, similar names to famous fiction characters and artists and authors during the time when Gothic literature was a big deal as characters in the book. So, for example, we have for Hans Christian Andersen, we have Hans Christmas Andersen is a character. We have, let's see if I can find some of them. We have Georgie Eliot for George Eliot. We have Plain Austen for Jane Austen. William Timepiece Thackeray for William Makepeace Thackeray. We have the Viceroy sisters, which are meant to be like 3 Bronte sisters. If you understand classic literature, particularly Gothic literature, English Gothic literature, or just English literature, you would recognize a lot of the hints and funny, you know, way that he takes those characters and puts them in this book and changes their names a little. But children aren't going to know that. They're not going to know all those books. They're not going to appreciate the witticisms and the, you know, like I said, the funny parodies and whatnot. So here we have a picture of the Viceroy sisters, which are supposed to be like the 3 Bronte sisters. And the book is about the girl lives in Ghastly Gorm Hall. Ada Goth is her name. Her father is like a lord. He's never home. So she's kind of lonely, abandoned, watched over by a nanny who's like a bear, and to roam kind of this Gothic world. And but she has to kind of solve a mystery. So there's mystery elements in it. Here's a picture of her, the very first page, reading. You see, I don't know if you can see it very well, reading a book. So there's art on every single page. The problem I had with this book is that every single page, he had an introduction of new characters with these weird, long, funny parody names. And there's so many of them that I couldn't keep track. And every page, there's 3, 4 word names of a character, very clunky sentences. The writing was like not smooth whatsoever. This was great. Like the Hound and one is meant to look like a magazine article. The story got really kind of weird as it goes on. There's just too many, like, I feel like this, I didn't look at the order of which book he wrote first. I felt like this might have been his first and he got some feedback on how to change that. But the art is amazing. There's this kind of fun Gothic world in these books. The most esteemed authors in the world are coming to show off their pampered pooches at the Ghastly Gorm Hall Literary Dog Show. That's why you see a lot of famous literary characters with their names just changed in here, which is kind of funny. But there's something strange afoot at Ghastly Gorm. Mysterious paw prints, howls in the night, and suspiciously chewed shoes. This one was way better. I love this book so much better. It didn't have all that clunky writing, zillions of names that you can't keep straight, and on every page, weird names for plants and creatures and objects that had like 4 words to one name that were just like mouthfuls. You had to read 3 times to make sure you got it right. Similar style to the art. So this one, preparations are underway for the full moon fete, which is a ball at the Ghastly Gorm Hall Bake Off. Celebrity cooks are arriving at the hall for the big event, and as usual, Maltravers, which is the butler, is acting suspiciously. On top of all this, Ada's elusive lady maid Marylebone has a surprising secret, and everyone seems to have forgotten Ada's birthday. So this one was a more I feel like the other one didn't have a plot. It was just weird. This one has a nice plot. The images the drawings are just as amazing. It's easier to read. I enjoyed it more. I had to, so Goth Girl and the Wuthering Fright, I got these books many months ago. I stopped like at the 3rd chapter. I couldn't even get through it. And then I went back again just the other day to try to go through it again. It was painful. Like I skimmed so much of it. This one I started reading and I read the whole thing through. It didn't want to stop, didn't need to stop, didn't feel that, oh my God, I had to go through this book again feeling. So I don't know about the other 2 books. I can't attest to them. So, but I think they're funny, they're witty. They're kind of like parodies, again, as I said before, of Gothic literature style done kind of in a fantasy realm. So it can still fall under that unit. So anyway, these are some recommendations. Pick up one of those or try one of the other 2 and see how you like it. The pictures tell the story of the setting and the timepiece more than the story itself, is the one thing those books have going for it. All right, thank you everybody for watching. Please subscribe to my channel here and check out my Facebook page, Children's Literature Training Academy.